There are so many cultures with so many types of food, but there are so many that just share some dishes with just different names and slightly different recipes. And I'm pretty sure llapingachos, what I'm making today, potatoes stuffed with cheese, may exist in many other cultures. But the version that I got inspiration to make this recipe for is from Ecuadorian cuisine. Now I'm going to be stuffing this cheese with almost like a feta type cheese, queso cortijo, and it's going to be so nice and creamy. Not going to be stretchy like a mozzarella or a queso blanco, but it just adds so much to it. You can add this with breakfast as a side, appetizer, but you are gonna love it because it's just that easy to make. My potatoes have been steamed in the Instant Pot. That is my go-to way of always boiling my potatoes, quote unquote, because it's just so hands-off and it's perfect every time. Now coming to the potatoes, you can either use your regular Yukon Gold yellow potatoes, or if you can find it, look for Papa Criollo. As a potato, it is a South American variety that grows in the Andes region. Regardless, peel the potatoes and just mash them slightly until they start to become smooth, and then add in your flavorings. And I'm going to start with some shallots, which I'm going to lightly saute with a bit of olive oil, and once it's fragrant, slightly soft, add that in there along with salt, pepper, and then start adding in some flour. For about 3 to 4 potatoes, you're going to need a total of about a quarter cup of flour. And the flour is essentially helping to bind the potatoes together, because there's not going to be any breading on the outside that would help to keep those potatoes together. I've seen some variations where egg yolks are used, but I much prefer the flour variation. Now once you've mixed it really well together and the potatoes are cool enough to handle, take 2 of these scoops and form it into a ball and then flatten it out lightly. Then just this little 1 by 1 inch piece of my queso cortijo cheese, and it's almost like feta, but it's not really feta. I think it's like much less stronger, but if you like feta, you're gonna love this as well. But of course you can go with something that you're more comfortable with, like mozzarella, cheddar, or queso blanco. Just put that in the middle, cover it with the potatoes, and then again flatten it out lightly between the palms of your hands. You always want to have some flour handy so that it's not sticky, and even like have flour on the plate or a baking sheet that you're putting these patties on, because it's gonna absorb any amount of flour, because it's almost like a gnocchi, right? Gnocchi is like made with potatoes and flour. So just make sure that there's something underneath it. I had to like add it in later on to make sure when you add it to the pan, you're not having a hard time. And you can see now that I had to like kind of redo the coating because it got kind of sticky. So, and technically you're not frying, we're just sauteing. I did try a version of this where I shallow fried it, a complete disaster, and that's why I always test out my recipes before I release them. But check out what happened when I did try to shallow fry. So I think what happened here is because there's no actual breading, and that probably was still some moisture in the potatoes. Plus I don't think I let it cool down enough. Make sure that they're cooled down completely in the fridge, and make sure that you don't overcrowd the pan, because then flipping it just becomes a complete nightmare. And I did both of those things. I don't think I let them rest enough in the fridge, and I just wanted to like get it all done in one quick batch. And that caused it to basically take in too much oil and then basically explode from the inside. And that's why towards the end it just became so much thinner, larger, greasy, and it was a nightmare to even handle, because the more you would touch it, lift it, move it, the wider, flatter, and the more crumbs of oily potatoes you would get. The right way to do it though is just to saute it. So a touch of olive oil, about a tablespoon minimum, and then maybe like 3 to 4 patties on the pan. depending on the size of your pan. And you want to cover it, and we're covering it because there is a lot of flour in the middle, and the steam will cook the flour all throughout. And not only that, because as that flour cooks, it's gonna bind and hold the potato much better together. This color is getting to what I want, but I'm gonna go a bit darker after I flip it. And flipping it is a bit of a challenge. You want something that's thin enough to easily go in without folding the crispy edges of the underside of the potatoes. So a fish spatula, a crepe spatula, something that's very thin, that can easily slide under, can work. A spoon could work magically as well. And you can see I was able to flip my shallow fried version that failed with a spoon, which is a wonder because it was impossible for me to get in there with a spatula because of me overcrowding it. But that's all. Once you get those colors and you've cooked it cover on, you're good to enjoy this with eggs, baked beans as an appetizer, with like a spicy Ecuadorian hot salsa, my Argentinian hot sauce. There's so many things you can do. It's potatoes and cheese. I want you to enjoy this and tell me what other variations of potato stuffed with cheese you have had before this recipe for llapingachos. I'll see you on the next one.